Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this AI for Health presentation. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. I want to welcome everyone here on this event in the AI Belgian AI Week. It's been a very exciting week as so far, and I think the next small hour we have some more very interesting, very exciting news to tell you. And first, I want to introduce my co-lead, and I think I can call him my personal friend now as well, Giovanni Briganti. He is a medical doctor and he has a PhD as well, and he will, together with me, guide you through this astounding event this evening. Giovanni, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you for a nice presentation. Of course, Alexander Olbrechts is my co-lead at AI for Health. He's the expert for mobile health technology and all e-health issues at Agoria. And I will now introduce you to the rest of the team. We have, of course, Nathanael Ackerman, who is the lead for the whole AI for Belgium community. We have Professor Anne Perez, which is a rheumatologist and professor at the University of Brussels. And she has been also my professor when I was a medical student. And finally, we have Miss Sofia Palmieri, which is a PhD student in health law, which is specializing in medical AI legal and ethical issue, which will be accompanying us in the coming months for the specific project on the ethical assessment tool of AI. So welcome to all of you who are joining us this evening. It's really my pleasure to present the first concrete project of the AI for Health vertical, which is the AI Adoption Barometer in Belgian hospitals. So the AI for Health vertical is a subpart of the greater AI for Belgium community, which is focused on the health issues of artificial intelligence. We have several goals. The first goal is to stimulate the AI adoption in healthcare. And the first two steps of this concrete subpart of AI for Health are the AI barometer itself and the AI implementation workshop, which we will be giving to, of course, to people that work in hospitals and hospital directions. The second goal is to build a climate of trust around medical AI, and that can only be achieved through education. The third objective is, of course, the one Sophia will follow, is to provide an ethical framework around medical AI. We also have further objects, such as putting up a medical AI cartography of the Belgian landscape and data governance. So let's look at the AI Adoption Barometer. Nathanael, your microphone is up, and other people too. The AI Adoption Barometer was a joint project launched with the help of the cabinet AY for data analysis, and who also provided the original questionnaire, who was submitted to the French community of hospital directors. And of course, our great media partner, that is RMN, through their two medical journals, Le Spécialiste and The Spécialiste, who are directly addressed to medical doctors, hospital directors, and hospital management as a whole. So there were. It's a really interesting barometer, because the goal here is to assess how medical doctors and hospitals as healthcare institutions are adopting in Belgium the vision of what AI can bring to clinical practice and also non-clinical practice, all the processes that are associated with medical care but are not directly clinical care. And we wanted to assess demographics, which Alexander will present to you in a minute, interest and knowledge in medical AI from the medical doctors community, the vision, the challenges, and the risks for AI in hospitals, and how we have to implement AI in healthcare institutions. through several points such as quality of healthcare, monitoring, diagnosis, etc., etc., etc. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Giovanni. Now let's look at the demographics of the people that already answered the questionnaire, and we can already say that 239 answers are already within the questionnaire. Giovanni, you can go to the next slide. Of those 239, we see that 60% of those respondents is Dutch speaking, and 40% of them is French speaking. Then, Giovanni, next slide.
Can you see the next slide, Alexander?
I can't see it yet, but maybe it's visible for the rest of the people. So I'm just going to continue. Of those 239 people, we also already have a slide view on the age of the respondents. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the French-speaking population. On the right-hand side, you can see the Dutch-speaking population. We can both conclude that the most represented age category is the age category from 46 until 55, and the second runner-up, I would say, is the 56 to 65 years old. The smallest group in both groups is the 25 to 35-year-old groups. If we look at the sex of the participants of the barometer, we can see that they're predominantly male. However, the female population is represented well, with, in both cases, approximately 40% of the respondents is female. If we look a little bit closer into the function of the respondents, we can see both trends arising in the Dutch-speaking and the French-speaking population, and that is that most of them are medical doctors, which is fairly logical, seeing that we targeted them for this questionnaire. The second group, and this is positive news as well, are the general direction of the hospitals and the medical directors as well. So I think we hit it, the target group very well, Giovanni, and I can give the word back to you to present the key trends of the adoption barometer as well.
Thank you, Alexander. So the key focus to retain here is that, we already have, although the questionnaire is still ongoing, 3 more respondents than the questionnaire that was done in France, which is really good. Medical doctors in Belgium are really interested in answering this questionnaire. So I will present to you 2 or 3 first key trends. Of course, the full event will take place when the research will be finished later in the spring. And so most doctors in Belgium consider the AI to be a very important project and subject to adopt in hospitals, and they see it as a very positive thing overall. As you can see, I hope you can see my slides. Although when we come to considering AI a priority for the hospital, I guess that what doctors think is it's a bit more divided, and I think we'll need to discuss that further later. But most doctors agree that at a 5-year plan, of course, AI will have a larger impact, and we will need to reconsider it. Most doctors say that AI is a positive thing for the working conditions, and they see it necessary that hospitals have an AI strategy. Some other key trends, I will divide it in 2 parts. That is the potential for AI as considered by medical doctors, and the challenges and the priorities of AI adoption in hospital. As of potential, most doctors, and this is a multiple choice question, so doctors could choose up until 3 answers in this questionnaire, and for these questions, for the potential, we had 28% of doctors that thought that AI can improve the economic performance of the hospital. Over 50%, I think that the number just dropped when I was saving the PowerPoint. Over 50% consider AI to improve the quality of life at work and decision making. Also, most doctors, or at least a good part of them, consider AI as a good tool to free up time for added value tasks. All of this will be discussed in the panel discussion later, and to allow doctors to have personalized follow-up for patients and to reduce errors. For priorities, we identified the need for anticipate mutation of work and skills, and to anticipate how we will have to reorganize work and task transfer. Of course, also identified domains of application. So, of course, here I present the main trends, the one who really popped up to the eyes. So these are the key trends. I will now invite the panel discussion to see what this means and what we can expect from the full report. So it is my pleasure to introduce Maître Caroline Az, which is the CWO of BHCT, Building Healthcare for Tomorrow, who is a lawyer who followed many courses and is highly qualified in artificial intelligence in medicine and healthcare as a whole from MIT and other important US schools, and Mr. Loïc Chabanier, who is a senior partner at EY France. So thank you all for joining us, Loïc and Caroline. I would also like Professor Anne-Thérèse and Nathanael, if you want, you can join the floor too. I have some questions for you, as you can imagine. So my first question goes to Professor Perez. What do you think of this newly found importance for risk detection and prevention? That this is an interesting finding from my point of view, because doctors are often painted as they are not really interested into quality and safety. So what can you tell us about it?
Yes, as everybody knows, hospitals are dangerous place to be, and we make all the time efforts to make this thing sure, but there are very regularly adverse events, what we call adverse events. It's like errors, but it's not that you want to make the error appears because there is something during the pathway of the patient or during the procedure that was not correct. And we make a lot of work to try to decrease that, to analyze that, and to see how the risk can be decreased. And it takes a long, it's a huge work to decrease the risk. And when you see that with some application, there is now just now application for COVID to see the risks to become a dangerous COVID. And that's, you enter some parameters, and it may gives you the probability that the patient will need the ICU. So you can be, you can prevent, but you can liberate some beds for patients who will need it. So you are not in hurry, and you are not busy to find beds who are occupied. That's why it's very useful. There is also something very interesting is the risk that a patient who is hospitalized for a lot of disease can also need, will need to be transferred or to be operated. And there are also some indicators, but you have to put this in an indicator. And now we are doing all that manually. And this is also important. Another thing which appears in the hospital is error in diagnostic and errors in treatment and medication, because you give a lot of medication, and this is one of the major risks also in the hospital. And AI is also able to reduce the risk. So I'm totally agree with that. And I think also that the improving of the decision making is also a way to reduce the errors. So they are linked. They are not two separate items. They are linked. If you improve the decision making, you will also decrease the errors. So perhaps the hospitals of the future will be safer than now.
Thank you so much, Professor Perez, for this very insightful intervention. So I agree with you that there is a lot of potential here. Of course, you're an expert in quality and patient safety. You led those sectors at CHU Brugman for many years, and that's something that caught my eye. Also, is that maybe AI is a chance, maybe a good chance for us to keep reinventing how we conceive and consider risk detection and risk analysis in the hospital environment. So that's definitely a good point that we should keep looking at with further studies and discuss it with the AI for Health community. Caroline Haas, you are, of course, a lawyer expert in bridging the economic and healthcare world and bring them to the citizen. A specific comment caught my eye is that AI, medical doctors are interested in what AI can bring to the economic aspect of the performance of a hospital. Of course, we know that nowadays doctors feel that like they are pressured upon from their hospital to produce and to be performant. What are your takes on that? And the floor is yours. I'm really interested in having your insight.
Thank you, Giovanni. I would say that it's completely understandable that in the first time, doctors are very interesting in what we have called for many years now augmented medicine and all the potential we may have in medical practice, risk assessment, value-based care, measurements for quality. So we have this entry on the AI floor in the medical practice, essentially. So doctors are very, very interesting in the added value for patients' safety, for patients' healing, and for patients' follow-up. But they have rather no insight of what AI can bring to a hospital when we go to the management part. And we have, I will say, two big domains where AI can complete the medical practice and offer better or more efficiency to reduce the pressure on the doctors. And we have, of course, what I call the purely management and financial part. So AI can help for better dashboardings. AI can help for vocal recognition. AI can help to fix agendas. AI can help to have all the administrative flow going faster and better, and creating also data banks which may be used for patient triage, for instance. If you have some basic protocols in your hospital and you use it in a machine learning algorithm, you can bring quite easily some algorithm which may help you in the management of your patients' flows and your patients' throughputs. This is something very important for hospitals, managers, and for physicians, of course, because this throughput, because this patients' flow are an essential part of the financial part of hospitals. How many patients should we have a year? For which kind of pathologies could we survive? Could we not survive with what we have been paid back by the government or by patients out of the pocket? So AI offer this opportunity to analyze the data, economical data science, and to give a very, very good view of how we can manage it. If you go one step further, you go in logistic maintenance, for instance. We have AI built up in machines, which may say it's time to maintain your machine. Or for stocks, you are in an operational room in an OP, and on a certain moment, you know you need some materials. If you have an AI conducted stock control, we know exactly as from which moment we have to order some drugs, or we have to order some materials. We have some bed management, which may be helped or supported by AI. We have space management, which may be helped or supported by AI. So you have all this management stuff, and a little bit in the same way as you have diagnosis assistance. So if you have augmented medicine, you can have augmented management by AI. And this is an interconnection. So we have the financial part, we have the medical part and medical practice. And then, of course, and we should never forget this, because we are talking about patient-centered care. It's much more. When we have the AI tools, we can talk about patient-driven care supported by AI tools, because AI is probably the best tool we can give to patients for empowerment, for literacy, to stay in contact with the hospital, to stay in contact with the physicians, to have it much more easier to accept treatment, to understand the treatment. So you have also this comfort part of the patients, which will be improved by using AI tools. So when you are thinking about AI and an AI strategy for a hospital, we have these three very, very important domains: the financial part, the comfort part, and the medical practice part. And I think it's very, very important that the managers understand the physicians, but that the physicians also understand the managers when they are looking for an AI strategy in hospital or care institutions. And defining a hospital strategy is also defining a medical project. So starting from the medical project with the physicians and building it up to a management, a global strategy for the hospital is something which is, I will say, missing not only in Belgium, but in many countries. And I will say, if we take one example, the best example we can take is in China or in Singapore, because they started from scratch. They have no public health system or very good developed public health system. They have built up later hospitals like we know. So they started from scratch and started immediately with a global strategy, including digitalization. So it's much more difficult for us in Europe, where we have a very, very, I would say, an old public health system where patients are covered by the government. And for the United States, where we have a lot of out of the pocket, and then for countries like China, where we started from scratch. So we need to be aware of the culture we have and think about these three pillars: financial, comfort, and patient literacy, and medical practice, and go, I think, to a patient-driven care where the physician has his role as a human, where the AI has his role as a tool, and where patient-driven, data-supported care could be piloted by hospitals or care institutions. This is really the way I can imagine AI in the EU countries where we have good public health systems.
Thank you so much, Caroline. This is of course fundamental, because what you say and what is not entirely clear for the medical community is that there exists two kinds of medical AI: the clinical AI, the AI directed to patient care, and that AI who will support augmented medicine, and the non-clinical AI who will support the entire hospital and care pathways that we need to offer patients. What you say is fundamental, because when we consider rethinking how we do the healthcare institution and society as a whole, thanks to AI tools, it is clear that we need to put more focus on this non-clinical AI, which is getting not that much attention in the literature. And maybe we should need to have a specific focus on that in our AI for Health work group. And I guess you would be the perfect person to lead that debate. Alexander?
Yeah, maybe some comments from my side. I think that's completely true. I fully agree with Caroline, and that is that AI. When thinking of AI in healthcare, I think most of the applications that pop into mind will be the diagnostic ones, the supporting ones on therapy and so forth, and that's very logical. They are very attractive. We see this in the companies as well. They tend to look at that as well when ideas pop up in young medical doctors, young engineers, when they develop ideas and so forth. But and this is, as Caroline and you, Giovanni, say as well, there is a completely other field of AI applications that we can harness, and that is everything that is organizational planning, people management, where it can come really into play. And I think we saw that as well in the key trends that we already that you presented, Giovanni. That is, it basically falls into these two categories. You can divide them up even more and further. I totally agree on that. What you can see is that it goes for improved decision-making, patient support, and so forth. And on the other side, you can see taking away tasks that are routine and make again room and time to dedicate again to patients. And there is a very important message, I think, to really use that time that AI can again free up. I'm not a medical doctor, but this is a trend that is very noticeable, even on my side, I would say, and that is that medical doctors are drowning in work, they are drowning in, and they don't have enough time and not enough hours within a day, and AI can really help to allocate that time again towards the cases that are and the areas where it's needed, being the expertise that they have. And not just a routine task, but really the difficult task and really the supporting ones, the management role of healthcare. And secondly, to push, in fact, to use that time again to really interact again with a patient. Now, a lot of time is spent behind this desktop because they have to manually put stuff in again. They have to feed the databases manually, and there's no prediction coming out. There are many very beautiful applications on that side to really take out that burden. And on the management side, as Caroline was mentioning as well, you can see exactly the same thing, efficient planning. If you imagine now, if you see there are not enough healthcare providers for the moment, and that means doctors, nurses, everybody that is implied in this whole value chain. If you could speculate or you can predict where the peaks are coming, as you have now with COVID, we see a third wave, a second wave. If you could predict these types of pressure points on a hospital, you could allocate your staff intelligently, and I think that could really help on those both sides in healthcare. And AI in health is first more than just clinical applications. It goes way further than that, and it will benefit the healthcare within Belgium and even further a lot, I would say.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Of course, it's something that I was wondering. Of course, we have been pleading for the installation of a specialized master's degree in artificial intelligence in medicine, and sometimes we tend to forget that the clinical part will only be 20 or 30% of the part that we'll need to teach doctors, because healthcare institutions will mainly need those specialized doctors in medical AI to drive the change through also non-clinical AI. And as you said, Alexander, 85% of a doctor's time every day is spent on indirect clinical care. So we spend 85% of time behind a computer and 15% of time with the patient. So sometimes patients tell us, so I feel like you're not listening to me, but it's because I need to write my report while I'm consulting with the patient, because after the consultation is gone, I need to see another patient, and the administrative tasks are so very important. And of course, there are the important point of how much time we're wasting because our IT infrastructure are not interoperable. We cannot explore and use known documents that we have produced because we do not have that interoperability yet. Anne, you wanted to make a comment.
Yes, I think that what Alexander said is very important, and also Catherine, and doctors have to understand that AI will make their life better, and really the essence of their work. The risk of AI will perhaps be to apply what we call receipt. You don't have make your reflection, and you are not thinking. But what is really important that when you have the time to think of the complexity of the patient, which is not only the disease, but the social situation, what he will do when he go out of the hospital, etc. This is very interesting. This is very important, and you need time to do that. And it's not useful to be on your PC all the time to enter data. What is important is to discuss the pathology, to discuss the way the patient will be in better health. And what I was surprised reading the barometer that the doctors didn't think, you don't mention that, but it was within another question, that they don't think improve the health, that AI will not improve the health. Yes, AI has to improve the health because all the things will be together, but they have to be convinced of that. And I am glad to see that most of them are convinced that it's important, but it's not in the strategic plan of the hospital. AI is not there.
Thank you so much, and these are important comments. Hospitals nowadays, I think that they lack the necessary expertise to tackle these strategies, and people like Caroline, for instance, are really important resources because they have this really nice vision. We had a question that I think ties really up to what I want to ask Loic. Loic, are you there? Okay, great, Loic. So there was a question. Assuming AI implementation, no, that was the second question I want to ask. That there was a first question. Is AI adoption in the hospital evaluated for specific application, or is it perspective at this stage? So why are we only asking doctors what they feel about the AI, what they feel hospitals should do about AI, and what they feel like are the priorities and main risks? These are the key points of the questionnaire. It's because, as most doctors commented onto the free space that was given them in the questionnaire, they lack the necessary education of what AI is, what the different tools, monitoring, diagnosis, remote care, telemedicine, and diagnostic, other application, non-clinical application. So they lack the clinical expertise and scientific expertise to understand those applications. And Loic, that will be my question to you. How do you, so doctors are afraid because they lack that expertise. They feel like they do not know enough. They feel like they should be educated. What do you see as a senior consultant? You have much experience in the management department. So what do you see as the main challenges for this specific risk that the doctors perceive in the future years? Loic, can you hear me?
It looks like his connection froze up, Giovanni.
Okay, so maybe we will try to answer that question later, because I think that Caroline has much to say about the second question, the question of responsibility. So someone asked, who will make the final decision if all implementation is perfect in the best of worlds and AI works? So the topic of decision in a hospital. Caroline, the floor is yours.
It's a very, very hard and difficult question, which is addressed since a few years already in Europe, and not only in Europe, in the United States also. Actually, we have to imagine that we will stay at least for 5-6 years in our traditional human responsibility, the time to go for something which is completely new in the world, saying that AI may take its own responsibility, may have its own insurance, may be considered as a person, as a legal person who have to take some responsibility in case of mistake. But until we were there, we have this very, very difficult part now, saying that AI is taking an enormous place in decision-making, in supporting decisions in management and legal domains, in financial domains. Most of the decisions taking in stock markets are already taken by AI, and we know exactly what can happen when we have this done. In healthcare, finally, it's the last one of the last countries which was not decided or supported by AI, but anyway, until now, in all the countries of the world, it is still the human who is responsible. And we have this very, very difficult part now to say, dare we to go or to counter the machine? And as AI is taking more and more efficiency, most of the people are just trust the machine or do not dare to counter the machine. Meaning that we are in a no man's land, actually. If tomorrow we have a problem, it would be easy for a physician to say, yes, but I have asked first machine, I have asked the 7th machine, I have asked the 3rd machine. All the machines told me I have to go to the right. And I was saying I have to go to the left, but it was hard for me to counter the machine, so I follow the machine. And then you come to the judge, and the judge will say, yes, okay, but you are the physical responsible person. So it's time we go in the European Union and in the United States for proper responsibility for AI solution and algorithms. And this is the reason why Europe is actually thinking about a regulation where an algorithm has to be explainable, has to give the explanation why it has come to its decision. It could be automatically explainable, or it could be helped by what we call an interpretability algorithm. And this is something we're sitting in 5 years of not knowing exactly where we have to go, but it's harder and harder and harder and harder for physicians to counter the machines because it's easy. You push on a button, it's the same thing with your GPS, go to the left, go to the right, go to the left, and you follow your GPS. In fact, you are responsible for it, but you follow the machine. And this is something we have to clear as soon as possible.
Maybe from my side as well, a comment on that. That is, I think it has something to do as well with the transparency. If I look to my colleagues that are not in healthcare, but they are employed with artificial intelligence within manufacturing or other types of worlds, I would say, their transparency is important but if you translate that to healthcare, why a decision is taken is a very critical question. You have to base, why does a doctor takes a decision and based on what? And then we aren't even talking about the legal implications on what you have to do on a regulatory scale, but just the idea of if you want to have a better production line, for example, and AI lets you take a decision, but you don't really know why. I mean, there's no harm, and I'd say this very cautionally, but there's no harm in that. If you do that with patients and in medicine, then it becomes very tricky. Hence, as well, the ethical considerations with AI as well. And there you can see the very strong link between law and ethics. And I think we are working on that as well, but you can see why there. And another approach or another comment on that is maybe I think we should see AI not as the replacement of human capabilities. I think if we stay in a manageable role of AI, this will be an important point of view and a starting point on how we use technology. And the idea of replacing it, no, it will support the human capabilities and it will enrich the healthcare. And if you look at that point, you won't fall into this cartoon-like thinking of AI will replace all jobs, and the very funny example of AI will replace radiologists. I don't see it that way. On the contrary, I think it will boost us and go to this augmented medicine indeed.
Thank you, Alexander. This is really important topics that we are tackling, and you and Caroline both are making comments, especially the one on what will I do that the decision AI counsels me? Will I oppose it? And what is my responsibility if I oppose it? And Caroline, you'll correct me if you think I'm wrong, but doctors should become better and better if you want to contradict the AI. It will be almost a privilege. And this brings me to the question I want to ask Loic. Loic, welcome back to us. And the question of how we need to educate doctors. So what is the future of what a doctor is? What challenges do you perceive from a management and consultancy point of view? Then I will give you my view as a clinician.
Okay, so sorry for the technical issue. I'm losing my connection once a day, and unfortunately, it didn't happen at the right time. I think it's first a question of organization, but it's also a question of change management, but it's also a question of ethics. And I think you have to consider all together if you want to move forward. First, it means from an organizational point of view that you must anticipate the evolution of practice, especially the division of tasks between humans and AI. And this is the point you have starting to mention. But beside that, it means that it's going to transform job and the way you use technology, and not only for the doctors, but for the nurses, for the admin staff, and things like this. So if you want to make it successful, you have to address all these topics at the same time. Obviously, it's more difficult for the medical practitioners because it's going to change a little bit, maybe not a little bit, their responsibility, because it's going to increase responsibility of admin people. It's going to increase responsibility of nurses. So you have to define this new organization and role responsibility of everyone. And beside that, you have to make it happen. So which means to activate a sort of change management process for appropriation of the tool, to ensure the training, to understand the role and responsibilities of everyone, and also maybe at some point to create new jobs to be able to master this new technology. So which means that it's not a question of only technology. It's a huge organization change between role and responsibility of everyone, and also how you help them to go from one point to another point. So this is really what you need to do. And I think for a doctor point of view, and I think it was a little bit the question you wanted to ask me before I lost my connection, is the fields where we see AI. And when you look at it more in details, where you can see the first, I would say, success, it's on activity management, like coding and data visualization, optimization of patient pathway, and also in terms of analysis and interpretation of imaging and biology. But when you look at going forward, what could be the next step, it's more research, it's more support to medical and nursing practices, it's identification of most appropriate treatment, it's a prevention and early diagnosis, and for all those topics, it will require the medical doctor to be much more involved and to be more open in terms of changing their practice and the way they deal with technology and their patients. So I think it's really a huge change that you need to carry over. And I think this is why at some point everybody believes that AI is going to be a game changer, but most of the time it's very hard to define how I prioritize this and how I organize it and structure it, because it's a lot of things at the same time, and it has a lot of impact in terms of organization and change management.
Thank you so much, Luc. That's really interesting, and your comment is making us spark so many so many comments in our chat. Most of you, I think all of you cannot see it, but all our speakers are chatting in our private chat and with many comments on how to invest and how to get back return on investment when tackling AI in hospitals. Mm-hmm. The questions on interoperability. I will just like to wrap up this amazing session. We launched so many topics, and I think we will have much material for our next AI for Health session. Just to conclude on education, just my viewpoint, we need to start immediately educating medical doctors, medical management, and anyone who holds who has something to say in a hospital environment to the challenges and the practicalities of that is becoming more and more an emergency. And so I guess something similar to the barometer that we have had for hospital will take the day, and in other departments, I think, and other management facilities. So we have so much more to discuss. I hope I will see most of you on the final event for the AI and Health Adoption Barometer in hospitals in the Belgian environment, which will take place in the spring. Stay tuned for the date. Who will be hosted in the studios of RMN. And I would like to thank my core AI for Health team. You are so awesome. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Alexander, for your insightful comments. Thank you, Loic, for joining us tonight and giving you your management perspective, which is really interesting. Thank you to Boza for the technical support. Thank you to Sophia for joining also the core team and make the link towards the ethical issue. Thank you, Nathanael, to having organized this amazing week from all points of view. So many events, so many speakers, and you have made this all possible to really challenge what we know and what we think we know about AI. And of course, thank you to all the participants. I wish I could meet you in person. Maybe it will be possible soon. I'm feverish. I don't know if just the event that is so good, but it's also maybe because I got my second dose of vaccine today, and I hope the night will go well. I wish you a very pleasant evening, and meet you later. In just 5 minutes, we will start, I mean, maybe 10 minutes, we will start the next event at Université de Mons, which is called From Human to Artificial Intelligence. I will be in the panel with Professor Laurence Pris and Hadrien Melot, a neuroscientist and an artificial intelligence specialist both, to discuss the history from human to artificial intelligence. So see you all then. Thank you to everyone, and have a nice weekend.